जुले एवरीवन, मेरा नाम है स्तांजनिदो और मैं स्पामो की को-फाउंडर हूँ। तो आज हम लेह में पहली बार हमारे पॉडकास्ट कार्यक्रम शुरू करने जा रहे हैं, जिसमें दो ऐसी शख्सियत को हमने बुलाया है जिन्होंने समाज में बहुत ही जेंडर के बेस पे बहुत ही अच्छा कंट्रीब्यूशन दिया हुआ है। तो हमारे इस पॉडकास्ट कार्यक्रम में होस्ट जो है मेरे को-फाउंडर जाकिर जाहक। तो उम्मीद करते हैं आप लोग हमारे पॉडकास्ट कार्यक्रम को ज़्यादा से ज़्यादा लोगों तक पहुंचाएंगे, पसंद करेंगे।
जुले सलाम एंड हेलो एवरीवन, मेरा नाम जाकिर है और मैं स्पामो का को-फाउंडर हूँ। लास्ट वाला जो एपिसोड हमने किया था उसमें मैं अपना इंट्रोडक्शन देना भूल गया था, तो मैं क्विकली अपने आप को इंट्रोड्यूस करता हूँ इस एपिसोड को स्टार्ट करने से पहले। मैं द्रास करगिल से बिलोंग करता हूँ और मैंने जो अपनी अर्ली एजुकेशन है वो करगिल से स्टार्ट किया था, एंड देन आई वेंट ऑन टू डू माई मास्टर्स इन मैस कम्युनिकेशन फ्रॉम कश्मीर, and then I went to Delhi, and in Delhi I basically did one of the most transformational program that I did, which was called Young India Fellowship. So I am a Young India Fellow from the 2020 batch, and then I went on to do a research degree in social psychology. So I am by practice a social psychologist, and then I got into the professional space, and I started working with Dasra at the beginning of my career. और दसरा में मैं जब काम करता था तो सेक्सुअल रिप्रोडक्टिव हेल्थ राइट्स यूज्ड टू बी द टॉपिक ऑफ माय इंटरेस्ट, एंड उसमें मैंने बहुत ज़्यादा काम किया। एंड देन आई आल्सो वेंट टू वर्क ऑन issues like poverty and ultra poverty graduation initiatives, some of the intervention that organizations like Bragg International works on. And as a professional, peace and conflict are very interesting topics and very important topics that is close to my heart. So मेरा जो academics और profession है उसमें मैंने peace, conflict और climate को बहुत closely observe किया है. And I think one of the reason that हमने जब स्पामो फाउंड किया था और हम जब बात करते थे इस बारे में, brainstorm करते थे, it was also because like how do we bring together, converge all these expertise into a space and talk about and make Ladakh as the priority, and that's where the conversation started. और आज का जो ये हमारा एपिसोड है वो हमारे एक सीरीज़ है जिसका नाम है नो योर शीरोज़, which basically is part of a climate and gender sensitization program, जहाँ पे हम लोग we invite leaders, especially women, to come and talk to us about everything that basically they do and the work they do. And this episode is going to be a little special because this is the first episode that we're shooting in Leh. Okay. But at the same time it's also special because like I and also as an organization we have observed that a lot of conversation or the exchange between Leh and Kargil, the two districts in Kargil, are very limited to politics. Yes. So there's not a lot of social exchange that happens, right? Like exchange of ideas, exchange of practices, processes, it doesn't happen. And I think when I was thinking about it, I thought that maybe the geographical isolation is one part. But on the other side, I also see that there is a lot of civil society organization which works in Kargil and are doing really great. And there are so many civil society organizations which are working in Leh, but doing great, but are also working in silos. So because of that, what happens is like discourses and narratives are not basically traveling to these districts, and that's why it remains limited into spaces. And I also feel a lot of civil society organizations who claim to work in Ladakh basically operate in Leh only, and not in Kargil. But because of that, what happens is like the narratives again get limited to the space. And I think that kind of logic works in politics because again I think regional politics हमारे यहाँ पे बहुत ज़्यादा strong है. तो I understand that if you are focusing on region like Leh region or Kargil region, I think it makes sense in politics, but I don't think that when we are talking about conversations like climate, we can't restrict it into binaries of districts or regions or language or religion, right? So climate has to basically talk and bring into conversation all other aspects which are not fitting into these binaries. And Spamo as an organization, we wish to have that seriousness in terms of conversation related to climate, related to gender, and as you said in the beginning before the conversation that gender and climate are intersectional and they cannot be separated at all. And I think that kind of seriousness we need to have, and through Spamo's effort we want to create that space for exchange, that space for conversation. So the point is, how do we take climate seriously? And for that we need to get out of these narrow boundaries of region like Kargil pain या Leh pain या फिर I'm a Buddhist, you're a Muslim, or within Kargil में आप जब चले जाते हो, then there are other divisions coming in like I'm from Dras, you're from Kargil, you're from Zanskar, and I think those binaries gets more and more complicated as you move within these spaces. So how in a way we create much more holistic and larger identity. और जब मैं इस larger identity को के बारे में सोचता हूँ लद्दाख के context में, the first thing that comes to my mind is ecological identity, right? And I basically saw this during 6th schedule में जब हमने protest किया था, where people from all walks of life came together, whether you're from Kargil or Leh, or whether you're a Buddhist or a or a Muslim, everybody came together and fought for the 6th schedule, and that made me realize that there is a possibility of identity, and that identity is based on the mountains that we live in, the rivers and the limited resources, and the vast and the cold desert that we call home, and that basically is an ecological identity that we can all strive for. And I think that was a conversation that in Spamo we want to talk about, want to carry forward. And one of the reasons that we invited you is also because you have expertise on working in these spaces, and I think you use fiction as a medium, which is one of the powerful tools to basically talk about all these issues. And you basically are the founder of an organization which very surprisingly working on on gender, and I found it super surprising to find an organization who's specialized on gender. So without digressing much, let's get into the conversation. So before I get into the questions, I just want to quickly introduce both of you so that our audience know that who they are talking to. So we have our first guest, who is Padma Angmo. So Padma Angmo is an author and the first women poet in English from Ladakh. Her debut poetry and prose collection, Ruler of the Sky, which I think you're carrying, explores ecological grief and climate action, taking readers on an interstellar journey of a timeless void before the Big Bang, where a cosmic family of chaos, love, life, and death is born out of nothingness. I think Padma is a journalist and an environmentalist by profession, and I think you worked with Times Now and also with the information department in Leh. And I was surprised to see you worked with Ernst and Young also.
Yeah.
Which again is
that was an
wonderful.
Interesting time there.
Yeah, and I think you contributed to development of sustainable tourism policies in Ladakh.
The tourism department.
Yeah, so we look forward to having conversation with you. So welcome to the podcast. And we have another guest, Tsering Nordon. Welcome to the podcast. And Nordon basically is a founder of SPOSPA Foundation. And through SPOSPA Foundation, Nordon has a vision to support and empower women through respectful dialogue, mentorship, and community-led initiatives. She is a learner in perpetuity, which I find very interesting, and a mentor too. And as a mentor, Nordon offers thoughtful guidance to young women, helping them explore their potential and find their voices. And Nordon champions gender equity not as a banner, but as a shared journey, working alongside others, listening first and celebrating every small steps towards positive change. And I just find it so interesting. And also because this basically feels so relatable to what we are aspiring to do at Spamo. So welcome to the podcast to you too. So before just getting into the question, why don't you just share a little bit about your journey? आपकी journey के बारे में अगर थोड़ा सा बता दें, I think that'd be much more interesting for our audiences to know. So any one of you.
Padma,
why don't you
so I started my journey with English honors. Originally I used to do botany honors, but I changed it to English honors because I realized that my passion lies with literature.
Oh.
So I changed it and I pursued English honors. Then later on I also pursued a study in journalism from Indian Institute of Mass Communication. Then after that I got a placement in Times Now, Mumbai. So working in Times Now, it really changed my perspective about, I was this, really young, naive girl, wanting to change the world, speak for the voiceless. So, but when I reached there, I found out that, the scene is completely different because the mainstream media is fear-based. So it is not about speaking up for the voiceless. It's more about, getting TRP and everything. So then that is not something I could pursue anymore. So I resigned and I came back to Ladakh. Then I joined information department. There I worked as a reporter. It was a really interesting and a very an experience that was really different because I worked with the government. So it was under the leadership of Commissioner Secretary Padma. So she was really she really introduced interesting events in Ladakh, like the Himalayan Film Festival, the education fair, and screenwriters festival, many things. So it was very interesting and I learned a lot. So ironically, rather than working outside and make a name for yourself outside, it was actually Ladakh that really gave me and made me understand what I really wanted to do. I realized that at the same time I was also working on my book, which was already delayed. Then eventually I published my book, and I automatically resigned because I wanted to take the writing seriously.
Okay.
So I published the book, and here I am.
Yeah, we definitely want to tell our viewers that we should definitely try reading Padma's book, Ruler of the Sky. Why don't you just wave it in the camera for once?
Yeah, I have prepared whatever you want to read.
Okay.
Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much, the team of Spamo, for inviting me.
Welcome.
And I'm happy to share the conversation about gender and climate with Padma, and looking forward to read your book too. So hi everyone, my name is Tsering Nordon. So I'll cut it really very short. I'll tell you about myself. I've studied the journey of gender had started when I was studying in Miranda House, Delhi University. So that's where I think I got my purpose in life, that I wanted to do something about gender, and especially for women in Ladakh. So I did my honors in sociology from Delhi University. Then I went on to do my masters also, but I did my masters from Jammu University. Then after that I went on to meet Mr. Sona Wangchuk. Yes. So we did I did a course with Hayal during that time, during pandemic, and it was a leadership course. So I met him there, and then we sat together, and he proposed a project to me. So he wanted to do a women leadership program in Ladakh with SECMOL. And he said that he wanted someone who is passionate about women and wants to carry forward this women issue in Ladakh and start the narrative of women leadership in Ladakh. So I happily said yes to him, all thanks to him. So I worked with SECMOL for 3 years. I'm talking about SECMOL because whatever I am right now, I think SECMOL has played a very important role in my life. I've become a lifelong learner because of SECMOL. So I worked for 3 years. So we did a program with the college students in EGM college. So I had 10 girls with me who came from different areas, from Zangskar, from Kargil, from Nubra, all from the border areas of Ladakh. So we did a course which was developed in making the women more confident, more sustainable, and to start the conversation about the narrative and discourse about why is it important to have women leaders in Ladakh, especially the political women leaders. So we did we did that project with that idea. And I worked with them for 3 years, and right now last year I resigned from SECMOL, and now I am working on my own project. It's a social impact project. It's called SPOSPA Foundation. My foundation is basically working on gender and equality. Why gender, if you ask me, because I think this is not talked about. इसके बारे में कोई बात ही नहीं करता लद्दाख में कि आप क्योंकि यहाँ पे लद्दाख में ऐसा नैरेटिव में ऐसा नैरेटिव सेट हुआ है कि लड़कियाँ ऑलरेडी एम्पावर्ड है, उनको एम्पावरमेंट की ज़रूरत नहीं है. तो अगर आप ये माइंडसेट के साथ चलते हो तो अभी तक अंटिल नाउ आप पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप में देखिए आपको कोई लड़की नहीं दिखेगी. तो आई डोंट बाय दैट नैरेटिव एट ऑल. और ये भी कहा जाता है कि हम लड़कियों को इतना अच्छा करते, लड़के से भी अच्छा करते यहाँ लद्दाख लेह में. स्पेशली मैं लेह के बारे में बोल रही हूँ, बिकॉज कारगिल के बारे में अनफॉर्चुनेटली आई डू नॉट हैव दैट काइंड ऑफ आइडिया. तो यहाँ पे ये होता है कि ये कॉन्वर्जेसन, ये जहाँ भी आप जाओ डाइनिंग टेबल कॉन्वर्जेसन होता है कि लड़कियाँ बहुत एम्पावर्ड है, उनको एम्पावरमेंट की क्यों ज़रूरत है. सो व्हेन आई एम टॉकिंग अबाउट women empowerment among my friends or family, so the first question comes to me is like, why women are already empowered, but I really feel women are not empowered. Wherever you see the data of you see the data in NCRB.
Yeah.
आप देखिए वायलेंस अगेंस्ट वुमेन लद्दाख में कितना है अपना हमारे पॉपुलेशन के हिसाब से. आप देखिए पॉलिटिकल लीडरशिप लड़कियों को है नहीं. आप जाइए, आप रूरल एरियाज में देखिए, बॉर्डर एरियाज में देखिए, अभी भी लड़कियों के पास access period poverty, access to pad nahi hai. It's so shameful to say that, you know, they do not have access to menstrual products, and I feel very sad saying this. तो इसीलिए with that initiative, with that thought in my mind, I started Spamo Foundation, and I hopefully मैं चाहती हूँ कि मैं हर जगह पहुँचूँ, स्पेशली कारगिल में भी पहुँचूँ. तो ज़्यादा नहीं बोलूँगी. तो स्पॉ फाउंडेशन इसी थॉट प्रोसेस से चला कि लड़कियों को और हम आप ऐसा टाइम आ गया कि only about women, we need to talk about the other communities also, LGBTQ community, जहाँ पे किसी के यहाँ पे तो लद्दाख में तो I think the conversation, ये तो डिनर टेबल पे बात होता भी नहीं है. एटलीस्ट वुमेन का इशू डिनर टाइम टेबल पे बात होता है, लेकिन ये तो बिल्कुल ही बात नहीं होता. तो ये सब I think it's time that we need to talk about all of these things. We need to, you know, put forward our thoughts and work towards gender equality. So that's with that thought I've started Spamo Foundation. Yeah.
And I wish you all the very best for that. But getting into the questions, so I'm just starting up with a broad question के साथ हम start करते हैं. Then we basically will get into all the themes that you just now highlighted. So the first question is, what does Ladakh mean to you? And when I'm asking this question, I'm actually asking this question that what does Ladakh mean to you personally and emotionally? Because I think that word basically describes your love for the place. But at the same time, since you've been working in this space and have been living in this in Ladakh for so long, how do you see Ladakh changing? अब लद्दाख को बदलते हुए कैसे देखते हैं? वो बदलाव पॉजिटिव भी हो सकता है, नेगेटिव भी हो सकता है, और वो बदलाव क्लाइमेटिकली हो रही है, पॉलिटिकली हो रही है, और सोशली हो रही है. And the most important question that I wanted to just add to this is like, would you say that Ladakh at the moment is at a crossroad? Because we have all these political conversations happening where Apex and the KDA bodies are going and meeting the Home Minister and talking about कि ऐसा होना चाहिए, वैसा होना चाहिए. And I think in that sense, we, you know, do you think that we are at the crossroad? So if we are at the crossroad, what are the choices we have as region, but most importantly as people? So if you can just like, you know, share a bit about it, what Ladakh means to you, and how are you see Ladakh changing every day in your work, and then if it's on a crossroad.
So I will just start with you, with what you asked with regard to what Ladakh means to you. So as my book is based on ecological grief and climate action, so when I first published my book, when I talk about ecological grief, it was such an outlandish term, like what is ecological grief? Who cares about ecological grief? Ironically, they were the one who were actually, you know, like suffering from ecological grief. So I simplified the time. I'll just use a bit of Ladakhi. I'll just, you know, ngata spang ones comes to me, especially skara nga shinam ne sumpa skare spang ngaya chun. When I used to be a child, I used to go to Skara Spang to do my studies. You know, it used to be so peaceful, so beautiful. So right now it's all dried up.
Yeah.
So then I asked those people who asked me, what is ecological grief? What is this fancy term and everything? Then do you feel sad about it? Like my own Shenam Pass, okay? Yeah, I feel sad about it. That is climate anxiety, right?
Yeah.
This is nothing, you know, no rocket science. It's very simple. So you asked like very beautiful, but at the same time very like sentimental question to me. Like, you know, like what does Ladakh mean to me? For me, I am Ladakh and Ladakh is me. So, and I'm not trying to say that you are not, like everybody. Even I think few days back in an interview, I said the same thing. Like, what do you mean by calling ourselves Ladakh Spa? Ladakh Spa. Ladakh Spa, it means that we are part of Ladakh. We are part of nature. We are not different from nature.
Yeah, of course.
So everything, every hum, every progress we try to bring in Ladakh. We have to keep that in mind, that, you know, like, it's like you're doing it for yourself. It's not just you're doing it for nature. So and that answers what Ladakh means to
you,
me.
of course.
So like every time now if I speak about climate anxiety or ecological grief, in my own case, I noticed, initially it was just really small things, like I used, like, the night sky used to be so bright, so bright, but because of the light pollution, because of so many hotels, like over tourism, mass tourism, I don't know, it's like because of that or like other contributing factors. But mostly I saw, like, my home was, now it's surrounded by big hotels. So I used to go to my terrace, and like being a poet and writer, I would just go to my terrace and think, look at the sky, look at the shooting stars. But then I noticed, I don't know, it's like I don't see the stars shining as brightly as it used to in my childhood times. And even I don't see Skara Spang, like as vibrant as it used to be in my childhood time. So this a sense of loss, it makes you feel so helpless, like, like you're doing nothing for Ladakh, right? So that's how I started to, write this book. It is also my climate action, my anguish, my pain, and then, like, it is, when you do something, something from your heart, I think, it has some sort of power. So many of my poems, it's not, of course it focuses on global climate issues and local climate issues, but it's also about simple poetry, and it's also about reclaiming our voice. So in Ladakh, I've noticed that writing and reading, they're not like, like valued that much.
Oh my God, yes.
It's not valued, and reading culture is also very low. So I recently gave a talk to students at CIBS. I used this quote, this African proverb. I said, until the lion learns to write, every story will glorify the hunter. So if you cannot read, if you cannot write, like even if you do some sort of grounded activism, that is also fine. But if you're not doing anything, then I think you have, like, not lost your voice, but you have, like, given up on it. That was your first question.
Very interesting. Yeah, please.
Okay. So, thank you for your question, Rakile. So, Ladakh for me is home. Home, I think for everyone is home. For me, it's a personal home. It's that feeling when you go out to study, but you always have the eagerness to come back.
Yeah.
Yes. It is that feeling that, being homesick when you, for whatever reason, you are out of place from this, from Ladakh, then you start missing the mountains, you start missing the dry lands also. Okay, we
course,
are dry,
yeah.
but it's that. For me, it's that. And it's very personal for me, what is Ladakh. Ladakh has always been in my heart, because whatever work I do, I'm a mother right now, so whatever I inherit, I feel that my daughter should not be inheriting money, cars, or any materialistic thing. I feel my daughter should inherit Ladakh as how it used to be, like when I inherited from my forefathers. So for me, Ladakh is that. Yeah. And if you talk about the change, I have seen Ladakh changing drastically.
Yeah.
So here I would like to share the negative aspect of how Ladakh has changed. When I used to be small, when I used to go to school in Ladakh, I used to see streams flowing with water. I used to see birds chirping. I used to see, just grassland growing on its own. Right now all is lost.
Yeah.
Ladakhi, especially people who are staying in Leh, they are so caught up in the materialistic, materialistic values, that they've lost the essence of what Ladakh is.
Yeah.
And that is what has changed. And most importantly, what has changed is the community knit society that we proudly used to call each other. Now it has become individualistic.
Individualistic, yeah.
Connection is lost. Connection is lost between father and son. Connection is lost between mother and daughter. Connection is lost between parents. Connection is lost between environment and the people living here.
Yeah.
Talk about, like, what is more personal to you than your connection between your child and yourself. That connection has been lost. That is what is changing in Ladakh. We used to pride ourselves of being self-sustainable. Ladakh being very self-sustainable, happily living, comfortably living, helping each other, community, remote.
Remote.
Yes, and now everything is lost. So we need to ask ourselves: do you want your child to inherit this? What is the real issue right now? Like how you said, you need to address the elephant in the room. This is what it is: climate change, and everything connected to climate change. I think it's a wake-up call for each one of us,
Yes, of course
before
it
it's
is.
too late.
Yeah.
So that is what is changing in Ladakh. So Ladakh is home, just like for everyone else. But for this Ladakh, we need to collectively work together. Policymakers, civil societies, and I feel every Ladakhi should have a say in what kind of Ladakh do you want your future generation to inherit.
Yes.
That has to be there.
Yeah.
So I feel that has been changing. So I hope that my daughter does not inherit a Ladakh which has polluted air, polluted water, with no connection with nature. When I really hope that doesn't happen. For that, we need to call upon all the people to come for an action. We enough of talking, and enough of setting the mood, or setting the mood for climate conservation. Enough of talking about in four walls of your office about climate change, water. Oh yeah, and one thing about water, like right now, one thing that I've noticed in my lifetime, the groundwater, the underground water used to be extremely safe, not polluted during my time when I was a child. Right now, I don't let my daughter drink the groundwater.
Yeah.
That has the biggest change that I've seen in Ladakh.
Yeah.
So you can see that what is happening. Yeah.
Yeah, I think these are some of the alarming things that we want to highlight
Yeah.
through these conversations, and I'm so happy that you brought this up. Nordon, when you talked about, and Padma, you also talked about the nostalgia of the past, and I so feel relatable to it, because I also grew up in Ladakh, right? So we have seen Ladakh changing, and this changing has been so drastic, especially if people who've grown up in 90s and then seen this drastic development in the early 20s. So my question right now to you is, basically both of you are building something, right? You're basically using fiction as a medium to basically talk about this ecological grief, and I find this word so powerful, and I think all of us basically experience and goes through that grief, and you are basically building an organization that talks about it. That form of activism we need to have in the space. So like my question is, what are the challenges? How are you challenging the status quo, and how are you basically trying to reimagine these spaces? And from an individual point of view, you can also talk about what your journey has been like. और जब मैं journey की बात कर रहा हूँ, you can basically talk about the big wins first, because I know we have a lot of bad things to talk about. We live in an age of uncertainty and bad things. But what are the big wins that you have? But also of like, what are the silent defeats that you have experienced? If in short you can talk about it a little. Why don't you go first this time? Yeah.
Okay, fine. I can go first. As in big wins, as an individual.
As an individual, as an organization.
Okay. So when I started SPOSPA, it just been, I think, 5-6 months. SPOSPA showing its visibility. So the challenges would be, first challenge would be, why do you need an organization in a place where gender equality has always
Where
been
women are already
achieved?
empowered.
Women are already empowered. So one is that challenge that I faced. Whenever I talk about my vision, my purpose in life with other people, that women, it's about women empowerment, gender equality. I want everyone. I want to create a space, inclusive space for everyone. And they were like, okay, women empowerment, Ladakh. I quote unquote I'll say, लद्दाख में तो देखा है ना कितनी लड़कियां इन पावर है, देखो ना सब इन पावर्ड है. आप देखो एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप में देखो, every women is shining with flying colors. And then I'm like, so you kind of they kind of tell you that why do you need this? You don't need this this whole idea of gender equality. So I really disagree. Disagree to biggest level. Why? Because pomo nang putse na farak Ladakh se na dukle. There is differences between men and women. Okay, it's just that we don't kill and burn women like how it happens in other places in India. Lekin ira charu nera to med na kato. If you think that gender equality has been achieved, and if you think that women empowerment has been achieved, you please question yourself why there is no one political leader until now in LSDC in Ladakh.
Yeah.
When we talk about Ladakh, both Leh and Kargil,
Yes, of course,
we have not
of course.
seen any one. One is that you see that, and secondly, you see it in your own home, how you socialize your boy and how you socialize your girl. It's totally different. This gender socialization is so intrinsic. So this is the challenge that I've come across. So when I did my first event, it was about gender equality and gender sensitization. So there were people, when we were doing the event, there were people who were like, oh, what is gender sensitization? What is to be men and women? Nothing like that. They never had this idea of men and women. Of course, you need to see this and very sadly, the whole questioning and challenging the whole narrative about gender comes from urban educated people. I'm sorry to say, it comes from urban, very highly educated people who talk like this. If I give an example, do you let your boy do you teach your boy cooking as a learning skill? No. Big no. Privately, when you talk about private, big no. And I hope to change that. I hope there can be exceptions. I'm not generalizing. There can be exceptions where cooking has been taught as life skill, not as a women's something as a gender role. But we need to challenge all the gender roles. The public-private debate. Because of public-private debate, we do not have women political representation. Because why? Politics is seen as public. Taking care of children, taking care of the family is seen as private. Public is women. Public is men, private is women. So
Unpaid
we need
labor.
unpaid work. So we need to challenge all the system. And then where do you challenge it from? You challenge it from your own home.
Yes.
And then you come to the society, right? So this is the biggest challenge I had. Other than the other challenges, I find it it's fine. You can get other challenges of registering NGO or getting all the compliances done. I don't think so. That's a challenge as altogether. The biggest challenge is this: that as an individual, I feel that we need to have we need to start this conversation about gender roles, gender stereotyping, and also about how intersectional gender is intersectional. You bring about caste, you bring about gender, you
Class,
cover about climate, class, all intersect. You cannot have a discussion in isolation.
Yes.
So that is the biggest challenge that I face until now.
Sure.
And the win that I wanted to say, as you asked about my win, I do not have as such win until now. except for how I worked for 3 years at Secmol. That time I had a lot of wins. Wins in how my students are doing right now, how I've impacted their life, how we as an organization, I working with Secmol, we all together impacted each women's life in a different way. So that
That's
was
a
a
big win.
win.
Yes.
That was a win.
Okay, so the big challenge was like obviously when if I call myself the first poet in English language, that itself is a statement.
Oh my God, yes,
Yeah,
of course.
because that shows that why I'm the first. Why aren't any like other women?
Mm.
Why aren't they pursuing a writing career? Why aren't they doing poetry? So so when I published, before I got published, I used to get a lot of sarcastic remarks like, why are you becoming a writer? Why are you becoming a
Yes.
poet? कवि बनोगे, शायरी सुनाओगे, आपको पैसा मिलेगा क्या? Like, what about your job? Focus on getting a traditional job. So writing, like I said earlier also, writing is something just so undervalued. It's like creativity, productivity is valued over creativity.
Creativity,
In Ladakh,
of
we
course.
have this kind of
Binary.
mindset. So the biggest win, if I say, was that like I almost said it in all of my interviews, like when I started writing this book, it was not to like gain validation, support, like, oh look, I'm the writer or anything. It was just something that like I wanted to do for a very long time. So when I went ahead with it, I published it. So something very like something shifted. It's like very powerful. Like when I published the book, when the book was out, I got like so many messages from women, like like you did it, like we never got the courage to do it, because
Yeah.
how can I convince my family to let us also focus on writing a book, focus on writing poetry,
Yeah.
because poetry is so useless according to them. Okay, and then
Which
I
is
say like
cliche,
yeah. So so when I got those messages, it was so heartwarming, and it was not like a win-win. It was something. Then at that moment, I knew that I shifted something. I shifted the reality, right? Like now there is a like new story, a new narrative. Oh, poetry, and by poetry, it's not about the sky is blue, the butterflies are fluttering. It can be about like grounded activism, which
Yes.
is what I'm doing through my book. So when I say the again the fancy terms like ecological grief and climate action, I do not just focus on Ladakh problem. Because
Global.
the global climate change is not
Yeah,
a
yeah, I
local
know.
issue. It's a like global
Yes.
issue. So that was, you can say, a tiny win, and there's like a lot more to go. And about challenges, like I said, there were like a lot of discouragement in the beginning, but once I published it, it was like really beautiful. Even those people who like criticized me, made sarcastic remarks, even they supported me, because this time I was not like talking the talk, I walked the talk, right? I showed it, like and there was so much of support from our own people, even from Kargil. So it was like, it was really like it gave me some sort of a positive energy. Then I
Yeah.
knew like this is not it, I have to do more, because when you receive that kind of love, that kind of support, it empowers you.
Yeah.
Then you feel like, okay, now I'll do something, like then people like they project their we project our insecurities, but they projected their hopes and dreams, like you
Yeah.
should do better, you should do more. So my next book is a children literature's book. So it's upcoming, and for that I have procured illustrations from Munsil school students. So they are like, the proper word would be children with disabilities, because especially abled is like not accepted, because it kind of diminishes their like problems.
yeah.
It romanticizes their problems to call them specially abled. So that's why I
It
say
is.
children with disabilities. So they made such beautiful illustrations, and through that book I'm also trying to integrate climate literacy from a very young age to children, because I feel like we have a lack of
I
climate
think that's a
literacy.
very important
Yeah,
conversation.
we have
to
lack
have.
of climate literacy. Like few of us us are sitting here. We talk about like Nordon made such good points. You are also making great points. But what about the like in remote areas, they
Yes.
have
I
no
know.
access, no access to resources, no access to funding. So how can they like they get access to like farming techniques, progressive methods through which they can increase their production and a lot of things. So why don't we like have that kind of climate literacy from like very early on,
Early.
from like school? And even for women, rural women, they should have access to climate literacy, to like information, to and any sort of training.
Yeah.
And I think we should also form sort of a advisory board, in which the youth, the adults, because just like Nordon said, like our traditional knowledge, it is endangered.
Yeah,
It will get
it will
extinct.
disappear, of
Once
course.
our elders die, it's gone. I'm a, like eco anxiety is another thing. I have different kind of anxiety about that. When I see my elders, our grandmothers, our teachers, old teachers, when I see them, when they tell me those things, I get teary eyed, because I just look at them and I think they'll disappear.
Yeah.
Who will save their knowledge, right? Like we all have to take the initiative, and I think we must like push the government, push the agencies to form committees, boards, in which like they include the youth, the elders, so that like whenever there's a negotiations for policy, we have a say. Like, I was there, but I felt unheard in my own place. This is a sign already, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
if I'm facing this already, so a woman like getting a job in a place like that, where she actually has the opportunity to make a difference. When I got the job, I was so excited. Oh, now I'm going to contribute to the policies. But again, like I even mentioned that like when we develop policies, we don't do it on sitting on a desk. Send me to remote villages. I want to talk to the nomads. I want to talk to the like children, everyone. I want to know what like what actually concerns them, what actually like affects them, what are their concerns, what are their fears and everything. But what I see is that, because I was the only Ladakhi in the team, I saw that like now I won't get too personal, I'll just say like the policies they develop, like it's like chat GPT.
Chat GPT policies.
So yeah, no, I'm like we know like AI is a like very useful
course.
tool. I'm not like rejecting AI, but to develop actual policies which like which is inclusive, you have to speak to the people.
Yeah.
We are the people, right? So if our voices are like ignored, then there's no point of that policy.
Having all of that.
Then that is just decoration. Like I mean, it is just an example of like we did it, okay, done. Like just useless, I would say.
Yeah.
So I'm really concerned. Like after working there, I was really concerned that like our government should take a really like proactive steps and form a like advisory board, a committee of our elders, the youth, everyone, wherein they can like give their suggestions, share the traditional knowledge, and somehow like preserve our traditional knowledge.
I think I really echo what both of you said when we're talking about policy making or interventions, and we should not just be dependent on the governments, but how do we bring together all the voices,
Yes.
right? And having said that, I also am very skeptic about this fact about how conversations basically remain stuck in chambers.
Yes.
Like suppose if we are some sort of climate experts, we talk about it, but we don't know what's happening on the ground.
Yeah.
So that chamber needs to be broken. And I think through these narratives, when I'm talking about public discourses, I actually mean that. Like, how do we basically take conversations from AC rooms to basically the grassroots and talk to people about it? But then, building on to your point of views and opinions that you made, most of the time we see that the women are just trying to fit in the men's world, right? The world is men's and women are just there to fit in. And we now see this whole conversation about, you actually talked about women representation, but also like the tokenistic representation, right? And sometimes I find this whole conversation of representation, मुझे कभी बार ऐसा लगता है that conversation we are having is how do we make women represent the men's world, right?
Okay.
The world is men's, and just we need women to represent that world, which basically is not representation at all. And that's what, before the podcast getting started, we talked about having prime ministers and chief ministers women, but they are much more worse than men, right? Because they basically co-adopt the patriarchal values and systems. So in the context of Ladakh, how do we challenge that ecosystem, right? I mean, how do we start that conversation? I know it's a very tough question, but it's just a question that I keep asking myself. But tokenism को कैसे question किया जाए? How do we question this status quo?
Like there, one of the methods I questioned that tokenism and challenged it may sound a bit radical. I resigned because it's like,
But
if
we
you're
need
not
radical
yeah.
intervention. So we should be radical.
if my voice is not valued, and I would just use this statement that was made to me. So every time when I saw mismatch of values, and whenever I saw it's misaligned to what Ladakhi people expect out of a policy, I would always raise my voice, and then I would be my voice would be shut down or suppressed, no, aisa hi hota hai. So I would obviously always object, and they said something, Padma, मैंने आपको भोली भाली समझ के लिया था, आप क्रांतिकारी निकली.
Oh God.
So this is the this speaks to something even more serious,
Yes,
because
much more dangerous.
it is the idea that we as Ladakhi are naive.
Yeah.
And I think
know.
literature
I
is
know,
also
I know.
treated
At
as
that
that
time,
way.
I was a published
Totally agree.
author, or that too, on environment and everything, and then they had the audacity to say something like that. It's really disrespectful. One. Secondly, it's they're just confessing to the fact that we hired you as a token, as a symbol.
Yeah.
We don't want your values, we don't
Poster
want your opinions. You're just here, stay here,
Stay here.
do your job.
I
That's
think
all.
that kind of a discrimination we actually see in the literary world also. I was basically, while I was doing my thesis, I basically got to know a lot of anthropological work on Ladakh, and basically a lot of anthropologists used to actually refer this place as the place of savages, and you need to civilize them.
Oh,
So I think
yeah.
that kind of opinion still exists in
Yeah.
outside Ladakh, and I think that basically filters into then all these policy making conversation where they basically take you as a token.
I even have a poem on that. It's called Legacy and Ode to Ladakh. I won't read it. So it also focuses on that, I say our simplicity is not naivety.
Naivety,
Exactly.
yeah.
It's our power.
Yeah, power.
Our simplicity, our innocence is our power.
Yeah.
That means we can both be a phoenix and also a sparrow. It depends on it depends on how we are treated. So our Ladakhi kindness is not something that people can take for granted. We are very powerful in our simplicity, in our power and everything.
Very interesting.
Yeah,
Your
so
take.
I totally agree with Padma. So to challenge the tokenism, first you need to have a bigger vision. Like what you are aiming for. For example, if we talk about reservation, so what are you aiming for? Is it only reservation, or is it women getting real power in the political space? So if your only vision is to just get reservation and the job is done, then I think that would lead to tokenism. Of course, that is going to lead to tokenism, because we have examples of how 73rd and 74th Amendment Act has led to tokenism of women's representation, right? So how do we challenge it? We need to have a bigger vision about what you want in that. And one more thing, women, I've come across women who shun the femininity, who act like men, who say that femininity is bad, and we don't want to be like feminine, we want to be like masculine. So that is what we needed to challenge. That is not needed. You need to accept your femininity.
Exactly. I completely
You need to accept your femininity, because in today's world, feminine energy is what is needed.
Yes,
I
of course.
completely agree.
I totally agree to you.
Yes, feminine energy is needed, because when you see the world with men leading the world, okay,
Yeah, we can
you
always see.
are seeing what's
All the
happening,
wars,
all the wars, what's happening. We can
happening
see
right
what's
now,
happening.
yeah.
So in peace, women and peace, I take women and peace as synonym. Like they are inseparable, because when we talk about, so this is what this is how we challenge it.
Yeah.
That femininity needs to be accepted for women themselves. Okay, I'm not talking about men.
Yeah.
There are women who shun their femininity. They are like, no, we want to be like men. Authoritarian, powerful, aggressive.
Yeah.
And then what happens to our soft skills like
Yeah.
empathy, compassionate, being kind,
Resilient.
helpful, resilience, it's brushed aside. It's brushed under the carpet. So this is not what it is. Leadership is not always about being aggressive, being loud in the room.
Yeah.
There are, I have lots of examples. So when COVID happened, New Zealand was doing so good.
Jacinda Ardern. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was led by a
Women Prime Minister.
So we have examples like that.
Yeah. And I think that was the one woman who basically told the world that how can you lead with empathy.
Yeah, with empathy. She was an example.
Yes.
So we can make a comparison between what happens to a world, what happens to a country which is led by men.
Of course.
So this is how we challenge it. Yeah.
Very interesting. I totally agree with it.
Yeah, me
Yeah.
too.
And I think all these values and strengths that we talk about, resilience is such a strength that
I
men
know.
will never ever know what being resilient
Yes.
or adaptable, which are
I
one
know.
of the characteristics.
And the society, it's like the society tells you these are the feminine traits. You need to shut it out or shun away all the traits. And I feel like patriarchy, because of that, men are also victim.
Yes,
Patriarchy, men are also victim. The men world, I feel men are also they also have to
That's so
fit in.
true. Like you're never
They
been-
also
Men
have
cannot
to
cry.
I
Men
know.
cannot be emotional.
Emotional.
I find so suffocating. Like
It is so suffocating, and it is having a big impact on the mental health of men right now.
And I think there's a scientific data also that a lot of heart
Yes.
attacks that happens in men is because of this one.
This
They're
only.
not able to express
Their emotions. I know that.
So-
And women are very good with forming bonds and friendships, and men, I think they lack that also.
all of that. Exactly.
Yeah, because society tells them to
Yeah.
not to do all of
Don't
this.
be
thing.
like
Don't
lovey-dovey.
So in Ladakhi Ladakhi, pomotos magyur, pomotos na mangu.
The stereotypes.
Stereotype.
Universal.
Oh, pomotos.
Yeah. Don't run like
Run
a girl.
like when pomotos la nguada, ha? Wah, pomotos la nguada. Ane marang moza zestin. To be very honest, I'm being very wrong.
Yeah.
Like what they are saying.
True.
Esto sa, anek to shigdu. Like, I'm sorry to use this language right now, but then this is the truth. This is the truth. Sto sa ane to la nguruk. I'm really shocked, when we talk about all of this thing. I've experienced myself, people saying that too.
It's very interesting.
Yeah.
This, brings me to the point if gender is a construct. Because,
I know.
as a child, the same thing. Ane choshimiru, nga aziratin, puzek choshikdo.
Acha.
Just because I would always speak up if a guy is
I know,
teasing
I know,
me,
I know.
I would fight back. Then I ostracized happen. This, ostracize this girl because she's not like a girl. So it was like a shock for me. Not like a girl. So I used to think, she's a human being, I'm a human being. What is a girl like? No, I was a kid. I had no clue. Then I started to learn femininity. Okay, like not the natural one that I had. We say that true feminine energy is like powerful, raw. It's
I
not
know,
just
I know.
soft, powerful
Soft,
and raw
raw.
also.
Yeah.
And I started to suppress that powerful raw version of me because I was so ostracized that no one would talk to me. Then I would I just learned one thing. So one time when a guy just hit me, we were kids, okay, so when a guy hit me, I hit back, of course. Then I was ostracized and everything. So the next time I understood. Now I started to see how a girl, you should act like a girl. So how a girl acts. So I started to observe how a girl acts. So I saw that when a guy teases a girl or hits her, she would just do this and cry. And then the teacher notices and the guy gets punished. Okay. So then I started to adopt those things. But this is such a now I'm trying to unlearn those things because I'm trying to get back to that inner child of me, inner version of me, the brave girl that I was as a kid that that wouldn't take that kind of teasings or mistreatment. And slowly I started to suppress myself, suppress my femininity, suppress my softness. Yeah, even I did that. And now thankfully I'm unlearning these things. I'm awakening to my, like truth and everything. But at one point I did that. Like I also started to act like a guy or a girl. So I feel like maybe gender is a construct. That means, like if I have to adopt femininity, not the natural one.
So much of interesting points coming up. I just wish that we had the entire day to basically talk about all of this. But just keeping the time in consideration, I'll just get into a specific question where I wanted to ask both of you that how do you see the linkage between climate and gender? I mean, we basically talked about it a little. And, in the beginning also when we were talking about, we actually said that climate change is gendered, right? How climate impacts basically disproportionately impact women than men, right? And I have seen it in my life, and I'm seeing it in my family, in my village, in my community in Ladakh itself. So how do you basically see that linkage between climate and gender, and how do you think we should be talking about it?
Okay, so when we talk about environmental degradation, so I always tell people, go and ask a woman whose child is sick because of the polluted water. Go and ask a woman whose land is dry, who cannot feed her family, okay? And I always say that go and ask the women, if you want to know, go and ask the women who basically have to walk miles to get a fresh water.
Yes.
Right? So this is what I always tell people, that if you really want to know about gender and climate, you should ask this question to yourself. Go and ask.
Yes.
So the lived experience of people is very important to understand. When we talk about gender, climate change, I see people in Ladakh advocate with climate change. Because which I think is quite regrettable. Because gender, not women specifically, gender and climate change are so interlinked with each other. Then Ladakh se nazar mein rolle ki sakyat la sa nangam pochi chana chama sangala effect po ama chano chezana sa na ama ism related yot kya iska nangam po na, they are so related. The soil and women, mother is so related to each other. The mother ama we kazuk she treat chono soil ba khuri thu chogla, that you can see in every household. Even in my household or even in your household, you can go and see your mother, how she is treating her flowers, how she's treating her kitchen garden, how she's treating. So that's how it is. So if there's any effect on that, it is directly impacting the women over there and her children. Tene yuta sung consequences po environmental degradation hota hai, to iska consequences se first victims on women. तो अगर आप preservation, women climate preservation या conservation के बारे में बात करते हो, तो उसमें भी सबसे पहले कौन आता है? Women आते हैं. Women कैसे आते हैं? आप देखो example, you can take the example of Women Alliance in Leh. They were the ones who who went on for the advocacy of single-use plastic ban in Ladakh, in Leh market. Because why? क्यों? क्योंकि वो प्लास्टिक से क्या हो रहा था, उन सबसे ज़्यादा इफेक्ट उन्हीं को हो रहा था कि हाँ इस यूरेना प्लास्टिक यों दुक छुना छास सामने ना प्लास्टिक लेब दुक यू माने सोपो दुक छूल दे माले बा मेरू. So they are the ones. So when we talk about, so I request everyone, when we talk about climate change, you need to talk about genders. You need to interlink both of them. You cannot see the isolation. We cannot see them in isolation. So it's high time that we need to have this discourse discuss. Even when I see policymakers in their rooms talking about climate change, I see all men sitting there and talking about climate change, not a single women. Who have the indigenous knowledge? Women. Ngata छासेना आमालेउने pesticides tamano, chemicals tamano, thinking कि family effect छानो, आवा soil effect छानो, बुच्चिक यहाँ तक कि बुच्चिक उनला effect छानो जिसकने अजुप यों दुपा perspective यों दुप, ओ indigenous traditional knowledge
We care for
even the buच्चिक, like we care for even the insects. So we don't go for commercialization of agriculture. Why? So this is what we are trying to conserve in Ladakh. So when policymakers are talking about climate change, they talk big about climate change, but there is no one single indigenous women talking about this. And when you go to Changtang, you stay with nomads, you talk to them. The nomads, the women who are the herders, they would have immense, of course, they wouldn't be literate, but they're so educated. Okay, they wouldn't know how to read and write, but they are so educated. They know each and every herbs found in the mountains, what is the use, what is the advantages of that herbs, or what is the use, not use. So how do you preserve that? I think we need to come खोन से उनको लाओ, आप उनसे knowledge लो, documentation करो. I really wish somebody is doing that. So there was one more story that I want to add on. So recently on social media, I got to know about this Women Alliance in Nerak who was conserving the juniper forest in that region, Sham region. So they were doing amazing work on this Women Alliance in Nerak were doing immensely very nice. I got to read about their story on Instagram because somebody working with them was writing about it. So I was like, oh my god, this story needs to be heard because वो क्या कर रहे हैं, juniper forest को उन्होंने इतना कंजर्व करके रखा है, वहाँ से कोई नहीं ले जाता है juniper, कोई भी नहीं. Buddhist families में तो juniper has a sacred, symbol है, but still they are like no. So women alliances are doing that. So we really need to get them in the discourse and narratives of climate change. Yes.
In the interest of the time, you also want to just add something very quickly.
Speaking of nomads, I happened to visit Hanle. So we visited few nomadic communities from Rongo, Tiling Nala, very special names. So in one of the communities, when we had a discussion about their concerns and everything, so one of the ladies said it really made me really think it's really something tangible. It's really something being done for them or not, because she said I as a woman I feel unseen and unheard. So and she has so much to offer, not just her traditional knowledge, but a lot of skills also. So that and I was visiting with maybe this team with the WWF team. So even WWF, they have their limitations. They can just provide corals for their livestock, but then the issues they were discussing went beyond that. So it was really affecting me, because they looked at when they speak, I as a woman, they were looking at me and speaking with me, and I feel it, then I feel again no, we should really do something about it, right?
I know.
I think I totally agree to that point which you made about when a lot of organizations that come from outside and work in Ladakh, they basically are not able to operate because they are not aware of the sensitivities that we have in Ladakh, right? And they miss a lot of point in that sense. So even if you're one of the renowned organization outside, but if you are coming in Ladakh, you are not able to grab the complexities, the nuances, and the
I would
layered
like to
understanding
add
of the
also, so I see every year the officers are rotated, they change.
Yeah.
So a new officer comes and I'm not saying they are they are not good or anything, but for them it's a very new place, Ladakh. For them to understand our complexities, our problems, it takes a lot of time.
Of course.
And then that's why I keep on saying that we should have a formal advisory board within the organizations, within the governance, so that no new officials they don't have to scramble for information and take months to understand the complexities of Ladakh. So I think I have noticed that, and I used to think that as a reporter when I was working. Now it will take 3-4 months to normalize so that he'll understand. Okay, So
And I think that's
yeah.
why the whole demand for legislature in sixth schedule is such a genuine demand,
Exactly.
because that basically talks
Yeah.
about it. Now coming towards the end of the conversation, I just wanted to ask one last question, and I'm expecting you to just quickly answer
Yes,
that,
sir.
so that because the cameraman has been looking at me for a long time, so we have to wrap up the conversation as soon as
Yeah.
possible. So the question is, how do you see Ladakh in next 10 years? I think you basically talked about it a lot.
Yeah.
But one thing that I really want to know from you is, like, what is one radical change that you're looking forward to? And how would you wish things differently? So, like, how would you visualize Ladakh differently?
I think
That's to, end up with a good hope.
I think we should go back to past. I really feel now
Okay.
it's too much.
Okay.
I really feel that ways. Like environmentally, if you see how Ladakh used to be before it opened its doors to tourism,
Yeah.
we should go back to that.
Yeah.
That's the radical change that I
you're
want.
talking about. Very interesting. Yeah.
That's the radical change I want. Yes.
So in my case, like I said, like I used a very simple, my own experience. Like I said, I noticed the birds disappearing. I noticed the sky, the stars. They don't shine as much because of the pollution and light pollution and everything. And like Nordon said, like in the past, I feel nostalgic actually.
Yes,
Like it
of
was
course.
not used. And people have become so like materialistic, opportunistic. And one person even said that, okay, if I get something, I'm willing to like give up everything. Like,
I know.
So even our people are developing that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
And then when I scold them, they'll say like, then how will I like earn my livelihood? So that is like a very like a question that like
Very reductive
it's
also,
yeah, it stings you. Like I can't say like you can't earn your livelihood, but then they throw this question back at me.
Yeah.
So what I would hope for future is that, like, of course we cannot go back to the past unless we have a time machine, but what we can do is that right now, like as we three have gathered, I hope that like every Ladakhi, like us, every Ladakhi use their talents. Like Nordon is doing such a great work, and
Yes,
you also,
yes.
and like I like whatever, like poetry. I think we should all use our talents in a way to like for everything, to protect Ladakh, to like bring innovations, new changes that like, then it would be a future which would be more beautiful than the past.
Yeah.
It would be a new Ladakh. I hope for that. I really hope for a new Ladakh, for a new world.
I think that's a very honest and a wishful note to
I know.
have the conversation close on. And I hope that this is not the end of the conversation, but basically the start of the conversation. And then I hope to meet more and more people like you. And I'm so impressed with the kind of things that you actually have shared with us today. And I wish you all the best for your work, and I
Thank
wish
you.
you all the best for making fiction, poetry, a part and parcel of all the things that we are talking about. And at the same time, the cliche thing that I'm expecting you to do is to basically look in camera and ask audiences to subscribe our channel, but at the same time also request them to visit this place, because this place is the person who actually gave us this place
Okay.
was really really nice to basically allow us to do this interview. So just quickly.
Okay, so guys, please subscribe and support. To be very jokes apart, to be very honest, we need support for Zakir and his team, Spamo, because so that the kind work that they are doing, it sustains, and we see more of organization like them, youths like them coming up and working for the society, because very less we see these days women youths working for the community.
Yeah.
So I feel that you should subscribe and support them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I would say, I would add. So, like I said in my last comment, that like if we really want to bring change, if we really want to bring a new Ladakh, which is like far more beautiful than the past, I think then we should follow, subscribe and support organizations like Spamo, like people like Zakir, Idvong, and all. Basically Spamo team. So I think you must support initiatives like that.
Thank you so much for that kind
You're
word, but
most
it's also a first
welcome.
word, but we'll take it for sure. So thank you, Spamo and Nordon, for this candid conversation. Angmo and Nordon, sorry. There is so much more to talk about, and I wish that this conversation keeps going on. So there's a famous couplet by Bashir Badr. So it's in Urdu, which says, "चरागों को आंखों में महफूज रखना, बहुत दूर तक ये रात ही रात होगी." And this रात is basically talking about the uncertainty we are facing in climate change. मुसाफिर है हम भी, मुसाफिर हो तुम भी, किसी मोड़ पर फिर मुलाकात होगी. So with that spirit in mind, we are closing the conversation, and I wish you all the best for all the
Thank
amazing
you.
work you do. But at the same time, it would be very unfair if we don't thank person on ground, Stanzin, who's our co-founder and basically managed to get all the logistics done. So thank you everyone for making this possible. And Julay, Khuda Hafiz, and see you in the
Thank you
next
so
episode.
much.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.